We are live. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is live, and I'm not on my own today. I'm actually joined by two guests. We've got Mark and we've got Bert joining us. Bert from SSP, who's the man behind the Percussa, which is what we're going to be diving into today. And Mark, who's also super central to helping the development, the community, and some of the new plugins that he's been writing and porting over into the SSP. So we'll have a bit of a deep dive into the new updates. I'm just checking the audio is working. We're going to dive into the updates, talk about the firmware, talk about some of these new plugins, what's new, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for everyone who's joined us as well today. Inky, nice to see you. And Wagyu, thanks for the questions. Kicking stuff off there with the questions of would you want to have alpacas or ducks to live with? Well, I went for ducks, but that's just me. But thanks for that. If you do have any questions, stick it in the chat as we go along, and we fire it to Bert and Mark, or I might be able to answer your questions as well. Just to give you all a little bit of background, just in case you're not familiar with the SSP. Well, the SSP by Percussa, this is it here, actually started out as a really successful Kickstarter back in 2017, would you believe it? And it did really, really well, and actually got to its third stretch goal, I think, actually, which was to include extra modules and a few other bits and bobs. In terms of the spec, if anyone's not familiar, again, essentially you've got a very high processor in here, 192 kilohertz, 32-bit resolution. It's jam-packed of different modules, from sequencers, synthesizers, filters. It's got audio in, it's got audio out, it's got USB audio, so you can use it as a sound card. Just looking through some of the things that it originally came with in there: granular processors, step sequencer, a couple of different types of filters, reverbs, delays, that kind of things. And something we're going to be talking a bit about today is this developing and loading your own plugins onto it as well. If you go onto the SSP website, percussa.com, you'll be able to see here, I actually did 5 video overviews of how the Percussa works, looking at sample playback, creating your own synth voices, MIDI control, external CV, and USB audio CV. So there's plenty there for you to go back, recap on, and get your teeth stuck into, and then you can come back here. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Andrew, hello. Hello. Yay. Hey, Andrew. Immersive audio. Hello there. Hello, Paul. So I think I'll shut up for a second and I'll introduce the guests. First of all, Bert, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, dude. It was really great to bump into you again at Superbooth. How long was that, like a month ago now or something? And it was great to see the updates. So I thought this is why we should do this. Let everybody know about all the new updates and what's going on with this. Just, if you could, just give us a recap on what you've been doing in terms of the updates. What's that meant? I believe you've rewritten the code for several reasons.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I worked on the past 2 years was rewriting all the graphics code on the SSP. And the reason for that was that we were using a graphics framework to build the software on the SSP, which was kind of starting to become a limitation. We were using the Juice framework, and which is really great, but that lots of people know from desktop plugins. But because the SSP is a hardware device, and everything needs to be really optimized and has constantly, and we need to have a lot of flexibility in the software and so on. So eventually we just kind of like hit the limitations and decided to rewrite all the graphics code of the software And to also, another reason we wanted to do that is to be able to use the GPU on the SSP, so we could do graphics acceleration. We could accelerate the graphics, and by doing that, by using the GPU, we could free up more processing power for the audio. We could potentially run even more voices on the SSP, or do even more advanced or complicated audio processing on the SSP. Maybe do time stretching in the future, or like FFTs or whatever. So anyway, so the main reason for that was to just free up more possibilities for the users of the SSP. And for example, here we have an envelope that is drawn by the GPU, and you can see it's quite smooth. When I change it, and all that's done by the GPU, by shaders that run on the GPU, or little programs that generate the graphics. So anyway,
so before that was not handled by the GPU.
No.
Now you've freed that up. The GPU's looking after that, and what that's enabled you to do is, because as we know, everything inside the SSP, you can develop it and add more and more modules into it. People can write these things as well. That it's just opened up, I suppose, a lot more headroom, if you like.
Yeah, and so because we redid all the graphics at the same time, we also redid the plugin framework for the SSP. So we decided to also give people the possibility to write plugins that would use the GPU for acceleration.
Wicked.
And so, which is also very important, in case people want to do really expensive graphics, just stuff that would take a lot of CPU power, that was really important for people writing plugins as well. So we wanted to give all this power to the plugin developers as well. So that was kind of like another motivation to do a new plugin SDK, basically. And Mark has taken advantage of that as well. So
brilliant. Yeah, so let's introduce Mark. Mark, you certainly have taken advantage of this. I think the first time I might have come across you on the Percussa Forum. Actually, let me just share that with everyone so they can see it. If anyone is on the forum for Percussa, you'll find Mark under the name The TechnoBear, which is an awesome name. And I don't know if was this the first one that you developed, Mark? This is back in July 20, and I think it was rings. It was porting rings.
It was great to meet you, Superbooth.
Oh yes,
I've been a fan of your live stream for quite a while. It's awesome
thanks,
stuff.
Dude.
So
Thanks.
It's great to be actually here. Which one did I do first? I think either Clouds or Rings. I can't remember, to be honest. I mean, I've used the name The TechnoBear for quite a while on different platforms, actually. As I'm an open source developer, so I've developed things on things like Axolotl, and I've done work on Eigenharp and all sorts of other open source projects that I find interesting, and that also obviously allow us to actually be able to get in there and help people and extend the use cases, really. So that's what I've been doing, and I think the obvious place to start these days is obviously the mutable stuff, because Emily's been so generous to give away the source code. So it's a reasonably easy task to do. It's basically the DSP is all there, and all you have to do is to basically hook up obviously the UI and then all the parameters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's we was talking about this earlier just before we came on, in that the mutable stuff it's no more, and that the code for the majority of those modules are about and available and exist in smaller and different face panels by different manufacturers. So you've essentially taken that code, put it inside of here, and they were kind of like the first things in there. But since then, it seems like you've been really, really busy. I've actually got some of the plugins that Mark's been developing that aren't entirely out yet, because I think you're going to be slowly releasing them throughout the year. Is that right?
Yeah, so I've already released about, I can't remember them, something like 12 modules already.
Right.
And I've got another 12 that I've already developed, and are basically ready to go. In fact, I think 2 of those I've released along with a rebuilt version for obviously the new firmware that's now been released by Bert. And generally I'll probably be releasing few weeks, really. Really, what I want to do is, the thing about modular is that it's not about collecting modules. It's about kind of getting to know modules. That's what I love about hardware modules, is that you buy a brand new module and you actually spend some quality time with it and you play with it. And I think that's something that I have been bad at when I've been using software modules, particularly things like VSTs, where at some point it's just like a Pokemon game and I start collecting them. So what I want to do is to release them and kind of let people play with 2 new modules, actually see how they can creatively use it in ways that I haven't thought, find any bugs that I've done, give me some feedback, and then we can move on to the next one. So that's my basic plan.
Cool, man. Well, let's have a listen or have a look at some of them. I can see you've got your SSP there in front of you, and in fact, this one's pretty cool straight away. This is a mixer, wasn't it, that you completely wrote?
Yeah. So I mean, I tried to be inspired a little bit by also what's around in the Eurorack world, because there's so many good designers. So there's no reason to not be inspired by it. And this one's inspired by the performance mixer by whoever it's Intelligent. I've forgotten who it is now. So basically, here we have 8 channels coming in, and we have then like a stereo out, a Q out, and a couple of aux outs. But of course, with the Percussa, it means that you can actually have as many of these modules as you want. I mean, you don't have to just have one of them, you can have many. So this one, for example, so it does all the kind of things you would normally expect a mixer to do.
Yeah.
And if we just actually kind of have a quick look at the patch, so if we go to here, we can obviously see here that we've actually got the so-called performance mixer. And then we're actually using with this, we've actually got a new reverb module that I've just released. The Percussa already has one reverb module, but always good to have more.
Very nice sounding as well, by the way. I think that was one of the things I first noticed when I was playing with the Percussa was that reverb. I think I've mentioned that several times in a few of my previous videos.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very full-on reverb.
Sorry, Mark. I'm going on a tangent here. But what's different about the reverb then that you've created compared to the original?
Well, they're all different. I mean, basically, the way that all that reverbs are basically things like delay lines with feedback loops into with filtering. So really, it's just a matter of changing parameters around so that they just sound different. This one's actually a bit simpler in terms of just control. You simply have a mix control, and then all you're literally doing is controlling the amount of reverb that's feedback's coming into the delay lines, and then you've got a low pass filter to kind of control it as well. So it's the thing is that there's just not one reverb. I mean, all reverbs are different. I mean, what's different about, say, one of the 3 different Valhalla reverbs? I mean, they all have a place, really. I mean, I'm sure we'll get more over time as well.
Sure.
I mean, that's the nice thing about, of course, the virtual modular, is that you can add different flavors of things as well. Next one across, and then the main voice that you're actually hearing there is actually Platts by Mutable Instruments. And actually what's interesting here is that I actually have 8 different instances of this on it, because I'm actually playing this with an MPE controller as well, which I can kind of show down here. You can see this thing down here. So that's the nice thing about the SSP. I mean, there's not many things on Eurorack that will do MPE and have polyphonic voices. So that's kind of one of the things that I like to use the SSP for. Is to bring some kind of polyphony into my Eurorack world.
I actually, just on that point, if you want to do polyphony in Eurorack world and you want to go down the route of having a separate envelope and VCA per voice, that's a lot of oscillators, that's a lot of amplifiers, that's a lot of envelopes. Whereas, some of the patches in here, like actually I've got this one here, which is, I think this is 16 oscillator synth, polyphonic synth, all with their own envelopes, all with their own oscillator as well, and it just sounds you won't be able to hear this, guys, but you can on YouTube. But it's just absolutely lovely to have all that polyphony taken care of, all in one place, instead of you know, forking out for 16 oscillators, amplifiers, envelopes, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is that, which I quite enjoy, is the fact that, of course, we've got 8 outputs and we've also got 16 inputs, as in like physical Eurorack inputs. So that, of course, means that you can take that polyphony and you can still manipulate it from the rest of the hardware setup, which I think is quite an important aspect for me. Is like, it's not the fact that just that the SSP can do things standalone, but I can send in control voltages from analog sequencers like the Uster or something like that, or be playing with it with hands on things like marbles and stuff. So that's how I kind of use it. So I get the power of the polyphony, and then I'll do things like, for example, take the audio out of here and I might send it into, I don't know, the nebulae or something sitting behind me, and play with it in granular there. So it all just depends where you want the hands-on control and where you want the kind of like the power, in inverted commas.
Yeah, but also we should mention that you've got MIDI mapping over most of the elements that you can see on the screen for most of the parameters, which means you can just assign it to if you do want that, you know, that control of changing the dial, which you can't always quickly get to because of how the SSP works. But if you've got a MIDI controller, you've got that ability to do so.
Yeah, I can actually demonstrate that very quickly. If you
go for it.
I'll do a different patch here.
Yeah.
So this patch, completely different. I mean, that's the thing about the Percussa, you do different things at all different times. Now this one's actually using a sequencer, as you can hear. Let me just turn my audio down a bit. Now, to MIDI map, all we need to do is basically, I've got a MIDI controller here, is I can basically just click on 2 buttons here. I basically say, select my Electro 1 controller, which I'm using, hit learn, hit this. Then I move a control on the Percussa, and off screen I move a control here on my Electro 1, and that's it.
Job done.
Job done. And yeah, this is an important part for me. I mean, to be honest, I'm quite selfish about the way I design a lot of these things. It's like, what do I actually need? And what I want is, I want to basically be able to have the power of the SSP, but I still want to retain some hands-on control. That's really the way I tend to go about it. So
yeah, agreed. I think that's the thing about the SSP. It's you know, you can build what you want within it, so you can make it your own. For me, when I'm using it, I'm using the mixer. I've started using that. I was using that today. I've used it to record live gigs. I've used it to record jams in here. I use it for audio processing, for polyphony, all at once. And just to remind you, you can have all of these things running simultaneously. The mixer, polyphonic synth, sample playback, audio in and out, all happening on the same patch. I guess you just keep going till it falls over. And I mean, Bert, how far can you push this thing before it says no, you can't run any more oscillators or whatever?
It's kind of hard to say, but I mean, a good patch to look at is the 8-voice wavetable patch, which, like Mark says, has, and which you've also talked about, is you have like 8 voices of wavetable synthesis. Every voice has the wavetable oscillator, input module, envelope, a bus module, and MIDI module, and then there is also the effects section here, which has the reverb and a delay and so on. And so there is actually I'll play this patch a little bit first. Controller hooked up here, and I've mapped these 3 buttons, these 3 knobs, to the XYZ of the wavetable oscillators in the patch. So So it's 8 voices. Of course, I can use the Eurorack joystick if I wanted to. I can use this this function generator. Anyway, I have another variation of this patch which has actually even more in it. So this has again 8 voices, but every voice is actually 2 oscillators, because the wavetable oscillator has a feature where you can set how many oscillators are in one oscillator module, so you can stack it 4 times and detune it and so on.
Oh, so, really? I'm looking at that now. I think that's something I might have missed in there, but I must check that out. I didn't realise.
Yeah. So then, anyway. That's still that's a pretty big patch,
and what's it running at in terms of CPU?
It says 38 CPU, 30% CPU. So
wicked.
That's 8 voices times 2 oscillators plus delay and reverb, and we still got room to do other stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, I can do a lot of stuff in the SSP.
Wicked. Cool. I'm just checking chat room just to see if there is any questions at this moment in time. Who have we got? Hey, Azio Head, thanks for joining us. Immersive Audio is asking, Bert, can you turn your volume up again just a little bit, if that's okay?
Is it still too quiet?
Just a tad, maybe. Yeah. Just
I'll bump it up a little bit,
just
more.
A little bit. Thank you. Let me just check. That's that. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. I've got so many screens open here. One thing that I'll just quickly draw everyone's attention to is if I jump back over to the forum, which is a key place if you're thinking about getting into the Percussa, the SSP. The forum's a really good hub for this. There's lots of people on there sharing the things that they're changing, ideas. Many of TechnoBear's plugins from here as well. Patches are shared on there as well, so it's a great place to go. And this is where you can actually get the beta, which is the firmware that we're all running here today, which is in beta of the latest firmware, which offloads that GPU basically to enable a lot more power and that kind of thing. So do run and check that out. So Mark, what else have you been working on? Actually, I suppose one of the questions that I have straight away is, because I'm not that smart and I don't really know how to make plugins and I don't really know how to put them onto the SSP and things like that. In layman's terms, can you just explain to us what is the process in terms of if you want to develop a plugin and put it onto the SSP? Do you need to know lots and lots of coding, or is there a way for people to get into this so they can learn about it and empower themselves so they can build these things?
Ooh. Okay, I'll do the easy bit first.
Okay.
Get the plugin onto the SSP. So it's very easy to get, for example, plugins that I release onto the SSP. It's got an SD card, so you literally can just put that into your computer and just copy the plugins over. As in for creating new plugins, it's an interesting area. The problem is they are basically full-scale plugins, so you're going to need to know how to write some graphics, and you're going to have to know a little bit about also what it is for how do you create a filter, what's the maths behind a filter. Now there's a lot of resources available on the internet to do that. It's relatively easy, I would say, if you're an existing programmer, to get into it. Certainly, I mean, up until a few years ago I didn't have a lot of DSP experience. The problem mainly becomes because it's a stack of skills that you need. That's always the problem with any kind of things. It's similar with, for example, I've developed stuff on the organelle, which uses pure data. And the problem is that people have to first of all learn pure data, and then they have to learn DSP skills, and then you have to learn how you're going to attach that to the organelle. So I'd be lying if I say it's trivial, but I
Sure.
also wouldn't turn around and say that it's not, if you're a programmer and you're interested in it, there's an awful lot of resources. For example, I tend to use Juice for my modules on the SSP, and that can be used as an open source project for free. And there are loads of examples of that. And also the fact, because it's such a common framework, there are lots of other projects that you can go and look at to see how they've also tackled the problems. So it's a matter of time, really.
Yeah, and I guess it's like when I got into Max MSP, I had to spend a bit of time figuring out how to use Max MSP, to make even just a basic oscillator and that kind of thing. So anything like this that you want to invest your time in and learn how to use, so you can develop your own plugins, particularly in Eurorack land. You have to ask yourself that question. But I think if you've got that time and you're open to learning these things, then you should go for it, because it just empowers you to kind of just build whatever you want in the Eurorack land inside such a powerful module as this one, I suppose. And like you say, you can always jump on the forum and just say, excuse me, Mark, how do you do this?
I've helped people before in terms. I mean, obviously, it's a matter of obviously spending time and practice and stuff. I mean, I have got some ideas about how to develop a module that would be higher level. So that rather than actually developing, shall we say, a module like this, but that perhaps you would link together things like existing functional blocks that I would create. And then you would expose the parameters. So creating something, shall we say, a bit like, Reactor, but that would be that you would create a module with on the SSP. I think that I think would be most useful to many people, because that would mean that basically people could then just write it using simple scripts. Which I think is, and also it's a bit how I did again. I did this on the organelle a bit, is to try to also to simplify the interface. I mean, if you look at some of my plugins that I've got,
let's jump in, have a look at a few more.
For example, actually, if we look at that Reverb plugin very quickly, you can actually see that this is a very, very straightforward plugin in terms of UI, etc. So all that's basically happening here is I've integrated DSP with some parameters which have ranges and that kind of stuff. Nothing particularly fancy. So I'm wondering if I can actually develop a module that would allow me to actually allow you to develop this kind of module, which would be, I think, really interesting. Now, to do something like, for example, I've created this module, which is data, obviously inspired by Mordax data. Now, this obviously requires a little bit more time and energy, because you've got to know a little bit more about basically handling graphics and that kind of stuff. But of course, the great thing about all of this is that you can build up to this. I mean, you don't have to start overly complicated.
Mm-hmm. Do you think one of the ways into this is you could get something like the mutable instruments code and then look at that and try and pull it apart a little bit and work backwards?
Yes and no. I mean, I've done it. There's a slight problem in particular with the mutable code, which I guess would be similar with many things. Actually, this is a similar problem if you try to, for example, port an existing open source VST to the SSP. And that is that if you do the mutable code, there's quite a lot of code on the front end of it that's dealing with the hardware. So you've got to identify what part is dealing with the hardware. And then what you've got to understand, and is the tricky bit, is exactly what range those parameters are being sent to the DSP engine. Yeah, because they might, all combinations of parameters don't work, but Emily's got lots of code in there in the hardware side that massages it and makes sure that it gets, that the DSP engine gets the right values. So in one sense, yes, you're absolutely correct. The DSP code in the mutable is a perfect educational tool, and it's actually, I would say, definitely a good one to try. But yeah, you have to the first hurdle you're going to have to work out is which bit is only the hardware and which bit is the DSP code.
Sure. Okay. We do have a very important question here for Bert from Immersive Audio. Can we buy the SSP t-shirt? Bert?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, not at the moment. We're out of stock of the t-shirts, so they've become a collector's item in a sense. But maybe we'll remake some t-shirts in the near future and put them on the website. But right now, yeah,
Wicked.
there is no way to really buy one, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. So, Bert, I've seen this screen that you've got in front of you with these sort of spinning balls on. I've seen this kind of really jumped out to me when there was news on this firmware update. What is this we're looking at? What's going on with this?
Yeah, so with the rewrite of the software, of the graphics, and because I wanted to use the GPU, I decided to make a new module for the SSP that we debuted at Superbooth, and it's called the PWM Module. It's basically a 3D ray tracing module that draws graphics using the GPU, and then you can scan the graphics using this scan line here, which you can see and which I can move using an encoder. And so it just continuously scans the graphics really fast, and it creates a wavetable out of it, which you can then play with your keyboard. So I can move the scan line. So here there is nothing, so when I play I don't hear anything, but I can move it. So when the light moves under the scan line, it kind of creates this effect that you're hearing.
Wicked. It's a really nice way to visualize, I guess synthesis or finding voicing, I suppose, through that little line. Is this something then that somebody could take and modify and then manipulate using code and then?
Yeah, so this is what you're seeing here is all being drawn in real time by the GPU using a shader program, which is a little program that you can find on websites like shadertoy.com and so on, and so which kind of like algorithmically generates graphics in a sense. So all this is done with signed distance functions, which is a bit of math that you can read up on if you're into that kind of stuff. But yeah, so the idea I've had is to make it possible to load different shader programs in this module. So then you'd have a little list box here, and you could scroll down and load a different program, and it would show completely different graphics. But you could still scan the graphics using this scanning line, right? You could still play the graphics.
Okay.
In a sense. So the oscillator also has, you can stack the oscillator. So this is 2 oscillators.
Can you give us a little bit more volume on that, on the synth, please, Bert? There we go. Nice, man.
You can also change the spread.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Sounds great. Let me just see if we've got any other questions in the chat room at all. They all want your t-shirt. That's what's going on.
I want one too.
I want one.
It's motivation for doing some more t-shirts and putting on a website. So I'll take that to heart.
If you are watching this, by the way, if you could just hit that like, that thumbs up button, that'd be really cool. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you are interested in seeing any more of my videos and that kind of thing. I've got lots of interesting ones coming up soon. So thanks for joining us today. Mark, is there any other kind of final plugins or anything that you want to quickly show us that is of interest to you, or you're kind of proud of, or shows off something?
Perhaps I'll show a few of the new ones because a lot of the people who've got Percussa haven't seen them yet. That obviously didn't come to Super Booth. So first one I've created is I've got the SSP off. Take a drink, as they say, in Sonic State. So this is a simple. Basically here, you can actually take either an internal clock or a clock from CV or a clock from MIDI. And you specify the clock input, and then you basically get 8 either clock multipliers or dividers from it. Very simple thing, but I found quite useful. It also will act either in one of 2 modes. So basically, when it's dividing the clock, it can either work on tempo estimation, or it can actually count the triggers as well. So if you've got a sloppy clock, or if you're not feeding really a clock as such, but just random triggers, then you can use the trig sync to just make it count those. What else do we have on this patch? We have the cart module. This is one of my favourites.
Cartesian sequencer.
A Cartesian sequencer.
Which basically, if anyone's familiar with the kind of make noise Renee, I guess that's strictly one of those, isn't it?
That's the inspiration, indeed.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
look at
open
that.
source, so this is all clean room development. I developed this obviously all myself, but this is. I use again make noise. I use it because it's just such a fantastic sequencer in terms of the way that I love the way that the things like the snake patterns work on it. So you can basically make it do different patterns with the same existing note sets that you use. So I love that. I wanted to see how far I could go almost with it on this one. As it were, reading the user manual and going, which Make Noise is notorious to not having the clearest of user manuals. So I don't actually have a Rene either. And
also the interfaces as well, although they're kind of quirky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean they're fantastic. But
it looks like there's a lot of work gone into this.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the standard thing, so you've got the 3 layers. What's quite nice, obviously, on the Percussa, of course, is we can see what's going on all of the layers all of the time. So the little bars here are actually representing the values. And then obviously you can see which layer is being played at any particular time. And then over here we have the outputs of it.
Wicked.
So I like that because I'm not that much into linear sequencers. The Percussa has a very good linear sequencer, but I actually quite like quirky sequencers. I'd been tempted by a Rene quite a few times, so I decided to save myself a little bit of money.
This is brilliant. I hadn't noticed this one, although I do now remember seeing it at Super Booth. But oh yes, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this.
Yeah,
very quick to change all of the CV values and to navigate around it.
You literally could just come down here and just dial in new CV values. It obviously, you can have it here. It can either have a scale or it can have a root, so you can keep it in scale if you want to. Yeah, and the others. Now, there's an interesting here at the moment. I made it as Rene-like as possible. So we've got things like the way that the mod mode works actually works by having one CV input. But I mean, of course, being the percussor, I can have as many CV inputs as I want. So I could actually split out all of these different modes into different inputs if I want to. But I thought just
Wicked.
as a starter, I thought I'd try. I mean, this is actually one point we haven't mentioned. I mean, one concentration, it's very easy when we're demoing the percussor to be kind of like showing the screen, because it looks really cool. But the point I'd like to remember is all of these things have lots of CV control behind them, and that's of course the beauty of modular, So you can be either taking CV from your Eurorack and hence another module here. You can be generating your own CV internally and modulating things. So as much as we're doing a lot of kind of like moving parameters here, bear in mind that probably in practice, most of the time what you're actually doing is sending in CV signals.
Yeah, totally. And I tell you what I like about this is, it's a Cartesian sequencer, not too dissimilar from the Rene, but it's one that you've then enhanced and taken further and built upon, which would be impossible to do with the hardware version, really.
And of course, you can have 3 of them.
Yes,
you can have as many as you want, basically.
Yeah.
They're very low in CPU load because, basically, they're very low in CPU load. So another one, again, it's all about filling in areas which I kind of like. So, for example, this module is actually another module I've created, which is I call it the Octo Modulator. This is actually creating 8 waveforms, which can be specified, and they can all be synced. But the issue is that, like a harmonic oscillator, they're being specified in ratios. So this was actually kind of inspired by the Oct module by DivKid, actually. Although he has fixed ratios for all of his outputs. But the idea was that quite often what you actually want is related modulation in a patch. So you kind of set the tempo, and this modulator can also be clock synced as well. So you can set the tempo to it, and then you can have your modulation all be in and out of sync. And then importantly, you can do things like, for example, so specify the ratios, but also the offset, and then obviously the waveforms that you want to use as well for it.
Wow.
So I wanted one place where it goes back to actually clouds, funny enough, where I could create quite a lot of modulation in one place quickly, but have some kind of relationship so that musically it makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. There's like the Batumi by Chaos Devices is a big favourite of mine. Similar kind of thing. You can synchronize them and all have relationships of that. But here, I could have 20 instances of it. I'm just quickly going to check.
8 outputs, but obviously you can have multiple of them as well, so you can basically have as much as you want. And I do love playing with the phase. That can be really good fun to actually kind of like move everything just a little bit off phase, but they're still on same timings and that kind of stuff.
Nice work. I should mention as well, we've got Celine in the chat. I wasn't aware Celine was going to be here. Hi, Celine.
Hi, Celine.
Celine also worked on the SSP's GUI as well. And she there is a question here actually, Bert, just quickly, and it's something that I think I know the answer to, and it's about the SSP. Someone's asking about that. Someone's asking, would it run all the same things as the SSP? How do you make the plugins work with a smaller screen? Well, I guess the easy answer to that one is that at this moment, the MSSP doesn't exist. It was something that was looked at. The community was asked. People seemed interested. I think it was floated on Kickstarter, but it didn't hit the goal. As of now, this is the only module by Percussa. Essentially, that's out there in the field. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say on that, but
yeah, there's a massive garbage truck right out my window, so sorry.
Oh.
But it's gonna be gone in a second. But
Sample
anyway,
it.
the micro SSP, unfortunately, the campaign didn't make it. I don't know exactly why. Might have been the timing of the year. We needed quite a bit more money to do the MSSP, because the hardware would have to have way more integrated. The CPU would have to go directly on the main motherboard and so on. So that's why we just had a much larger goal for the MSSP. You can hear the lovely garbage truck in the background. But anyway, the micro SSP didn't make it, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that it will never happen. It's just that we don't know right now when we would do it and how we would do it and so on. There's also kind of global component shortages, so we're just gonna have to wait to get a good answer for that. But for now, you can order the SSP on the website or from your favorite Eurorack dealer. We're collecting pre-orders, and that's going pretty well. So
oh, okay. So yeah, I was going to ask about this. Pre-orders are open because I think you said you've only got a couple left in stock at the minute. Some people have mentioned that they've seen the MSSP on modular grid. That's where they got a bit confused. But if they want one of these SSPs, best thing to do is just head over to the Percussa website.
Yeah, you can just go to your favorite Eurorack dealer and ask them to order one for you, or you can go to the website and order a unit directly, and we'll obviously keep you updated on shipping date and so on and so on. So you can do all that right now.
Wicked. And in the meantime, try and get some t-shirts done as well.
Yes, for sure, we'll do that.
Brilliant. Look, we've been streaming now for about 48 minutes or so. Thanks to everyone who's been here, and do hit that thumbs up if this has been useful for you. But Mark, is there anything else that you think you should share with us before we draw this to a close?
Mark?
No, not that I can think of. No, it's.
I think we're all super impressed with what you've been developing, Mark, and what you've been creating and enabling users to have, and really opening up the SSP. Because, in my honest opinion, a module like this, it's driven by the people that own it, the community, and once they're empowered to make their own plugins and get into there and start building stuff, even the very basic things, I think that's how modules like this grow and develop, and people run with it. It's driven by the community, and you've really shown us the power of this, and I'm quite blown away, so well done, man.
Thank you. No,
Thank you, Mark.
I think you're right.
Really
I think
great work.
The community is an important part of these things. If we can come together, sharing patches, sharing ideas, I think it's always it's interesting how you use these modules, all of the modules within the Percussa SSP, because obviously it's not about one particular module, it's about how you can combine them. So that's what I find interesting, is how the community is actually getting out there, creating patches, making music, really.
Wicked. I
agree.
Cool. Great. Sorry about my microphone there, folks. Somehow it just got really hot on the old microphone. Any last questions from the chat? Thanks for being here with us live. Obviously, if you join us for a chat, so for a live stream, you can always ask. You can always then ask us questions in real time. Asio Heads asks us, "Can you play Doom on the SSP?" Bert?
Yeah, very likely. I mean, it's a Linux platform, and the CPU is really powerful.
What?
So I bet you can probably play Quake on it, but. I
What?
haven't tried it, so it's it's an exercise for the users.
Wow.
Is that Mark?
Okay.
I said you can almost certainly compile it. I think Doom's being played on virtually everything these days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, wicked. Well, I think we'll wrap things up there. Again, thanks for joining us, Bert. Awesome work with the module. I can really see why you've spent a long time, I know, sort of rewriting, recoding, and freeing up that GPU. So well done with all of that. And you're essentially doing what you agreed to do when you did a Kickstarter, which was I believe this was one of the goals that you wanted to finally get
actually,
to.
this particular thing, adding GPU support and a plugin SDK with GPU support was actually something that was not. It was a stretch goal, but the stretch goal was not reached. We would have to have reached $120,000 on the campaign to do this, and we didn't. We only got reached the goal, but we didn't collect $120,000 in funding.
Right.
So, but anyway, I decided to do it because it was such an important thing to do, and I really wanted people to have access to the GPU, and I wanted to give Mark and other developers access to the GPU as well. So it was just such an important thing that I decided to do it anyway.
Wicked. Paul is actually asking about visually impairment. Paul, I've got a few friends who are visually impaired and particularly find, I think it's green and yellows, difficult to differentiate. But as with anything on here, you can change the colour schemes if you know how to get into there and change that. So that is possible. And also, if you want the fonts bigger, or the graphics bigger, you can also have them. Again, you'd have to do some coding to do that. Although I'm wondering, Bert, if that might be a thing far off in the future where the fonts could suddenly magnified by 5 times or something like that for visually impaired people.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing pop-ups for parameter names or values when you turn the encoders again. So that's something that I might add again in the software.
Cool.
I've been working with Mark on other stuff as well. So Mark has been started to contribute a little bit on the main software as well. So maybe we'll get into that.
Wicked. And Edward's asking, will there be a way in the future to have the scan move?
The scanning line, you mean?
Scanning line, I think that's what he's meaning.
Yeah,
so like applying an LFO to it or something.
Yeah, I think you can already do that. That feature is already in there.
Wicked.
So, you can move it manually.
Yeah.
And there is a modulation input for the X, so you can actually already modulate the X. The scanning line. You can already do that.
Yeah. And you can use external LFO for that, or you can choose an internal one, or both.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you could just
combine them.
Input module in the patch and then hook it up to the input of the oscillator, of the scanning oscillator, or you could just use an LFO and patch it internally.
Looks like Mark just suddenly got an idea there.
I was trying to remember whether I'd actually done that. I was just trying to remember.
It was probably one of the first things that I thought when I saw that. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be nice if we could, if that could be modulated, and of course it can. Okay, great. Okay, I think we'll kind of end it there. If there's no other questions, again, thanks Bert for your work. Mark, awesome work on all of this. I'm going to enjoy playing with the plugins that you've written, particularly the Cartesian sequencer.
Can you see the scanning line moving around?
Let me make that a bit bigger, mate, so we can see. Oh yeah, look at that.
So I have this LFO here, which I hooked up to it.
Internal LFO.
Yeah, you can see on the scope here the LFO, which is coming in and which is modulating the scan line.
Wicked. Can we hear it?
Let's. Obviously, it's cutting in and out because the scan line is moving to parts where there is nothing. So
yeah. Wicked. There you go. That is the beauty of joining us live on a live stream. You can ask us questions here and now, and we can make your dreams come true. And on that note, we'll say a farewell. Thanks again for everyone for joining us. Do hit the thumbs up, hit like and subscribe and all of that kind of thing. And I'll see you next time for some more of this. So take care, everyone. Bye for now.